and welcome to another episode of the Diaspora Dialogue series with LA. I am your host, Lillian Agbeyegbe. You are joining us from many platforms. You may be on YouTube, you may be on Facebook, you may be on Spotify, you may be on TikTok, wherever you are. I want to encourage you to like, to share, comment, and let somebody know what you think about this podcast. On the Diaspora Dialogue series, we are having conversations with members of the diaspora. And yes, we're telling our stories by ourselves. We want to step away from this narrative that we all have the same story, because that is absolutely not true. We all come into the diaspora for different reasons. We all connecting the diaspora in different ways. We're staying connected with home in different ways as well. So let's talk about the blessings of the new land. That's why we came here. The beauty of the homeland, because home remains home all the time, and the benefits of integration. Today, my guest is Aderayo, and you're going to meet her and she's going to introduce herself. Aderayo, I'm so excited to welcome you to the program today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your full name, where you are right now, and what you're doing?
Sure. So my name is Aderayo Sanni-Aderibigbe. I am originally from Abeokuta. Grew up in Ibadan until I was about 9 years old, almost 10, and then moved to the United States with my parents. So I currently work as an HR analyst. My passion, though, is in the arts and in making things. So I also own a company called Adire Design. And what we do is we create mostly customized home goods with Adire fabrics and other African fabrics. So the wall art behind you is one of them. We also do pillow covers, placemats, all sorts of things, and we customize them for people so that they can have culture on their walls as well.
Great. So if you missed that and you're going to hear some more about it, it's Adire Designs. Aderayo, you moved to the US while you were still like a teenager, double digits. But I want to start this conversation or extend the conversation with your name.
Okay.
I wanted to find out the meaning of it because I do have a grandniece whose name is Aderayo, and I know that there are usually some stories about our names and why we get named. So what's the story behind Aderayo?
Yeah. So the first thing is that I was named after my grandmother, my mother's mom. And what the name means is it has several meanings. One is the crown has found joy, and the other is that we arrived and found joy. So I'll accept either one because I hope to bring joy to people's lives, and my parents say that I brought joy to their lives, and so that's why they gave me the name, as well as commemorating my grandmother as well. And it's always lovely to hear of people named Aderayo because growing up, I think I was the only Aderayo that I knew. So
I'm not surprised to hear that because
yeah.
I don't think I knew many Aderayos until my niece was named Aderayo as well. And so it's really very enriching. I always like to find out, people's names and what it means about. So you brought joy and you're bringing joy to us today as well and to the people that you serve. Now, you were saying that you moved to the US when you were really young. So I guess you didn't have much of a say in coming to the US?
Yes. Yes. And the story is that my father moved 2 years before we did, my mother and my sisters. He came on a diplomatic visa, so he was working in the US already, establishing himself and the family, getting it ready for us. And no, I did want to move because I missed my father, but I didn't want to leave my friends behind, my cousins, my aunts and uncles, and everyone to come to this new place. But my mom said I was excited. I don't remember being excited.
Awesome. So you say you don't remember being excited, but do you have any memories of growing up and the memories of Nigeria that you remember? Do you see any correlation in those your growing up days and raising your own children growing up here in the United States?
So one thing that I saw that was a bit different is that we always played with the neighborhood kids. Our parents were not afraid to have us play in the yard and with people in the area where we lived. Here, there's a bit more fear of strangers or even of our neighbors sometimes because we don't know what can happen. So that was a huge difference. We did have friends, neighborhood friends growing up in the US, but it was just a bit different because the cultures were different. The way they were raised was a lot different. They could talk to their parents in ways that we couldn't. So as a child, it was a bit difficult having to bridge that cultural divide.
I can imagine. I can imagine. I remember thinking that my daughter was going somewhere for a sleepover. My sister gave me
Mm.
the evil eye, like, what is that? We
Yeah.
don't do sleepovers. I was like, he's like, this is America. We do
Mm-hmm.
things differently. We don't do sleepovers. And you are right on the money about, the way the parents talk, the way the children talk to the parents,
Mm-hmm.
really very different from what we do. So you got the opportunity to really grow up here though and go to school here and then begin your professional career here.
Yes.
Do you know in terms, for instance, relative to your parents and how they're sharing narratives, do you hear the stories? Because I know that, we have a way of pointing out things that, you just thank God you're here. You hear the stories about the things that you're doing here, or you're able to do here, and they
Mm-hmm.
didn't have these opportunities to do because they
Yeah.
didn't grow up here.
Yeah. So one thing my parents made sure to do was to always instill the Nigerian and Yoruba culture in us. So they always spoke with us in Yoruba. Um, the one thing I wish they did was force us to respond in Yoruba because now we really understand it well, but can't speak it well. We can speak it a little, but not too well. And they always made sure to remind us that you are Nigerian. You're just in this land, but you will always be Nigerian. You will always have respect. And this is your family. We will go to see them. Don't forget where you're coming from. And I'm glad about that because uh, I meet a lot of uh, kids who either grew up in the US or were born here and they, oh, I'm American. My parents are Nigerian. I'm like, no, you're Nigerian, you know, embrace that culture. So I'm glad that they did that for us. Of course, we had a lot more opportunities than they did here with in terms of resources and infrastructure and all of those things, but they always spoke well of Nigeria to the point that I wanted to visit all the time, you know?
Awesome. That's so exciting to hear. And when you said you wish they had, forced you to respond more, it makes me
Mm-hmm.
remember my mom when I was growing up. My mom was an Okpa lady that's in the Niger Delta area of Nigeria. And she would, yes, speak the language and we would always respond in English. But she had this way of getting us. If you wanted something and she knew that you really wanted it, and you
Mm-hmm.
spoke English to her, she would just respond in the Okwe language and say, I don't understand what
I
you're
know
saying.
exactly. Yeah.
And you're just looking at her like, excuse me, how is this momentary lapse of understanding of English language going to solve any problem? But she
Mm-hmm.
stuck to her guns. If she knew you really wanted something, she would not understand it. You would have to
Mm-hmm.
say in the language.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the only time that she could get us to speak. So, yes, like you, I understand the Okwe language, but I can't really speak it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I got some practice in, but I can't really speak it as much as if I had been speaking it all the time.
Right, right.
Yeah, I was really excited to hear that, you said that the opportunities that you have from being here was sort of different from your parents. Are you able to elaborate when we talk about the blessings of the new land,
Mm-hmm.
and you look at the narrative that you hear from your parents and your own life? What can
Yeah.
you say are the blessings of the new land? What would you say you've been able to accomplish
Mm.
differently because you came into the United States?
So one thing that immediately comes to mind is discipline, parents disciplining children. And I'll forever thank my mother because we lived in Michigan at first and then moved to Maryland. And in Michigan, she attended a lot of parenting courses, the free community center courses on parenting. And so she was able to kind of mix what she learned in those courses to the, traditional Nigerian parenting. And so we had a lot of talking and lectures as opposed to more physical punishments and things like that. And as an adult, as a child, I was like, oh God, another lecture. Here we go. I don't want just beat me and let me continue with my playing. I don't want to listen. But as an adult, I learned that wow, because my mother explained to me why she was upset with me, or my father explained why he was upset with me, I'm now able to do the same with my children. And they have an understanding of, okay, this is why I shouldn't do what I did, and here's how to avoid it in the future. Um, and my siblings and I, we talk with our parents like they're our friends now. So it fostered that type of relationship between us where it's trusting. We feel comfortable going to them with any issue, and we know that they won't judge us and will offer constructive advice.
Yes, that is so interesting to hear about parenting. And that's one of the things that I like about these conversations, because you always hear something new every time you talk to somebody else. We
Mm.
haven't had this conversation about parenting classes. Of course,
Hmm.
growing up, I mean, first it was interesting to hear that you had to go to all these PTA meetings and
Yeah.
be involved, volunteer in your class and show up and do all of those things. Parents sent you to school. The babysitter, the house help was the person who took you to school, or some cousin or something.
Mhm.
Like your parents are showing up in your school for like PTA meetings. Like, how's that happening?
Right.
But here you not only are they going, they actually offer classes for parenting, and you
Mhm.
go and you have all of those things. So it's really very interesting and very enlightening that helps the dynamics of child to parent relationship in such a way that you don't get the glare like, because I told you so.
Right.
And that's the end of the conversation. You
Mhm.
actually have an understanding, and then you're able to translate that to your relationship with your children. That's wonderful, looking at the blessings of the new. I think that's absolutely helpful for us to keep culture. Like you said, you spoke the Yoruba language, you know that you're originally from Nigeria, but really take the blessings of the new land in terms of giving children agency, ownership of
Mhm.
themselves and their thoughts, and including them in conversations about their lives.
Right.
Very interesting. Let's look at the beauty of the homeland. Do you remember when you first went back to Nigeria after you came? What was that like, and how have you stayed connected with Nigeria?
Okay, so we didn't go back for the first time until I was 17. You know how the whole immigration stuff and papers and citizenship and everything works. So, by the grace of God, I was finally able to go back at 17. And as soon as we landed in the airport in Lagos, I just felt this feeling of, wow, I am home. Like it was just an indescribable feeling of, this is where I belong. And a lot of African Americans actually say they feel that same feeling when they go to Africa for the first time. And it's very real, you just feel the air is different. So it was beautiful. I got to see the family that I hadn't seen in a long time, my grandparents, my cousins, everybody. And it was just a wonderful experience. And one thing that I've always done is volunteer. So I volunteered for a few days at a Form 1 motherless babies home. That's Federation of Muslim Women's. I can't remember the full abbreviation, pardon me.
I think it's Federation of Muslim Women's Association of Nigeria.
Association, yes, I think so, of Nigeria. And, volunteered at a motherless baby's home. And there was this one little baby, Zainab, I'll never forget her name. I wanted to adopt her and bring her home. I said, no, I can't leave without her. So um, it was an enriching experience, and it kind of set the foundation for my return. So after that, I went back every year or every 2 years. And it's been a while since I've been, but I feel that connection every single time I'm there. Of course, there are the differences in resources and infrastructure with not being used to lack of electricity anymore, not being used to having to fetch water and things like that. But the richness of the culture and seeing people who look like you in all walks of life is incomparable to whatever you'll get from the diaspora.
Awesome. So it's really, I really love the volunteering component, because, a lot of times it's so ingrained in the culture here that we don't know that volunteering happens in
Mm.
Nigeria. So to hear you can actually go and volunteer with Motherless Babies Home and put out your time and support people doing that. And as you talked about the homeland, I was very surprised you didn't say anything about food. I'm so used to
Oh,
you talking about Nigeria going home.
oh
And
my
so
gosh.
tell me, what's your experience with food there and
Mhm.
here?
Yeah, as you can see, I'm full-bodied, so I enjoy food. And I wanted to try everything. And unfortunately, the limiting factor was that my stomach had become an American stomach. So, so there were many moments of discomfort, but I still wanted to try everything anyway. You know, anytime I go to Nigeria, I don't change my diet really. I don't, limit what I'm eating, but I lose weight without fail every time I go to Nigeria because the food is so clean, it's healthy, it's organic, it's nutritious. Our traditional foods that people may look down on have so much value to our bodies, So yeah, food is always an excursion I'll go on in Nigeria.
I love the fact that you say the food is so clean and you lose weight when you go to Nigeria. So
Yeah.
that must mean that you're doing something right because I gain weight when I go
Oh,
to
oh
Nigeria.
no. Well, let me tell you. So what happens is that I've noticed a lot that there are more restaurants available, and they're not traditional restaurants. They're westernized restaurants. People are buying more frozen foods that are imported from other countries, foods that have been injected with all sorts of chemicals and antibiotics and additives. So if you stick with the natural foods, it tends to help.
That is so enlightening to say that there's a distinction between the type
Mm,
of food. So it's not so much of the fact that the food is there, it's the source of the food. So if
yeah.
the source is natural, it's more healthy. I should know that I'm a public health practitioner, but hey, I'm open to gaining new knowledge, and that was very
Mm,
helpful. Thank you so much. So look at cultural identity connecting. I'm glad you said that your parents had raised you, made you know that you're Nigerians. How do you stay connected with your roots in here? I mean, so I'm looking at your Adire thing behind you, and
yeah.
that's very African. And so, how do you maintain that identity, being here and staying connected with the homeland?
I studied history for my bachelor's degree, so I focused on primarily on African history. So that's one way that I made sure I stayed grounded and connected to the culture. And social media has been a huge help in kind of staying with the zeitgeist, knowing what the newest thing is in Nigeria, what the culture is looking like now. And then in college, I made a lot of friends who came from Nigeria to school and then returned. So by connecting with them as well, I'm able to remain aware of what's happening. It's also very important to travel, to go there, and actually be a part of it and see how things change every time, to see what has changed every time you travel, what new roads have been built or are being built, what buildings have come up, what people have been displaced, unfortunately, because of those developments. But staying with the culture and then traveling outside of the more popular places. So I do Adire, and one of the things I hope to do when I go, the next time I go, is to actually visit the places where they make the adire, because I have people design the fabrics for me, but I haven't been to the town where they actually do it. So ourselves in the culture, going beyond our comfort zone, and going to places that have been lesser touched by modernity, helps to see what our culture looks like and how we can continue to develop.
You talked about a couple of things that I wanted to talk about, so you talked
Mm,
about social media helping to stay connected and how you're connected with some of your friends that have come and gone back.
mhm.
One of the controversial issues I often hear from people is like, if you're really interested, you should come back
Yeah.
home. Don't sit down there and say, you're looking out for our best interest. So you have friends who have come and you have gone back,
Mhm,
and then I want to use this to anchor on the third leg of the conversation about the benefits of integration. What do you see at the benefits of integration? What's your response to that narrative that you have to be home? If you're
mhm.
really interested, come back home.
Yeah. So I love Nigeria so much that I married a man who lives there. He, travels back and forth, but he's primarily in Nigeria. He lives in Enugu as a physician. And so I am rooted in Nigeria in a way. My other half is rooted in Nigeria. And our plan is to bring our kids there for a few years as well, so that they can also learn that they're Nigerian and see the culture and really be immersed in it. Yes, I agree with people that if you love the country so much, why don't you come and help us fix it? I completely agree. When you've lived in a place though, like me, and I grew up here, and this is really technically my home. I've spent the majority of my life here. I'm accustomed to here, and it takes a while to fully integrate to Nigeria. So I've actually lived in Nigeria for quite some time, since I got married. I came back here, had kids, came back to work, but it's always been on my mind to go back. And everybody has their journey. Some people are able to do it immediately. Some people are able to wish it. But I feel that as long as it's in your heart that you want to go back someday, then you're trying.
As long as it's in your heart, you want to go back someday, you're trying, so you can marry that, put one leg here and one leg there. And let's look at the leg that he's here. When we look at the challenges of integration, would you say that there have been some challenges to really establishing yourself and your value in this new land, is staying connected in this new land?
So in terms of integrating and being accepted into the culture, that's very difficult. And I would even say it's harder as a child, especially around the age that I came, because I'm already Nigerian. I'm 9 years old. I'm almost 10. I'm Nigerian. I'm Aderayo. I grew up in Ibadan, and then I moved to Michigan in a predominantly white area. So that was already culture shock number one. Having to learn to speak English the way they speak and convincing them that, yes, I do speak English and I have been, since I was a child. And no, I didn't live in huts. And no, I didn't wrestle lions and all of those, terrible stereotypes that people have of Africans is very difficult as a child. And it does create some cultural identity issues that if you don't have the proper support from parents and the adults around you, can really create some mental imbalance and confusion. So thankfully, I did have that with my parents. Growing up though, as I grew up and integrated with the culture, got the American accents and everything, I became more comfortable with who I am and in my skin. So in high school was when I was really able to go back to the Nigerian thing because my high school had a lot of Nigerian students. So I joined the African Students Association, really started loving Nigeria again and reminding myself of where I come from. And then as an adult, that just, continued to expand that, okay, I'm Nigerian. I'm also American, but I'm mostly Nigerian.
That is so awesome. And I never really thought about that. Although I had a guest before who said, and talked about how she wouldn't participate in class because once she opened her mouth to speak, people are giggling and she's like, okay, that's not happening anymore. So and really important to have that support to be able to manage that relationship. Are you keeping your pulse? You keep on social media, you keep the pulse related to your work and what's going on and how that's, but how about the general outlook of the country and how diasporans are projected on the international landscape? Are you involved in that in any sort of way? Does that mean anything to you?
Yes, it absolutely does. And I feel that there's no one as passionate as a Nigerian talking about Nigeria, especially Nigerian politics. So I always keep a foot into those discussions. I've tried to join organizations that are also passionate about Nigeria and developing the nation. It is important to go back though, like I said, and not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. One thing I've noticed though is that a lot of people who do go back end up running running back to the diaspora in frustration because they realize that, oh, yes, this is a great idea that I want to implement. However, there are so many hurdles and red tape and people that I'll have to step above in almost an impossible way that I can't make those changes. But I feel that if enough of us go back, slowly those changes can be implemented. Even if it's in your own community, in your own neighborhood, you can start small, and if there are enough cells of that, it eventually becomes a national movement. So that's a way that we can help.
Yes, that's so good. And when you talk about people going and coming back, a couple of episodes back, I had Solomon Lel, who was a guest on this program, and he talked about, is originally from Ethiopia, and talked about going back home to set up a resettlement agency for people coming back home. and we don't think about it, but
Mhm.
it's true. You know, we leave our homeland and we come here, and we have all these support resettlement agencies take our time to assimilate in here, and we just go back home and we expect to be able to fit, even though we
Yeah.
are not familiar with being away. You know, so I really think that, you know, that's something that a lot more people should consider. This
Yeah.
resettlement agency and support system, it's not enough that, you know, you have your family there and things
Mhm.
like that. There's some, you know, you have to have a timeline and have an opportunity to integrate into the system
Yeah.
to strengthen your ability to be able to stay. Otherwise, people will keep coming and keep going. And it's not because they can't stay, it's just because the infrastructure to help them resettle was not there for
Right.
them at that point in time. There
I
you go.
agree.
Yes, it's so exciting talking to you, getting to learn about your name, how you brought joy to your family, named after your grandmother on your mother's
Mhm.
side, but really coming to the US at a young age, having to go to school and navigate all of that, but really staying connected with the homeland. And we've Adire Designs, yes,
Mhm.
Adire Designs, and staying connected with that. Before we round up the episode today, is there anything that you want to tell me about being a diasporan in the diaspora, and you know how people have reacted to you, or how you're connecting, or the, you know, really looking at these three key areas? We're talking about the blessings of the new land, the beauty of the homeland, or the benefits of
Mhm.
integration. Anything else that you think that we should be part of this dialogue, but we haven't covered it yet?
Yeah, well, we've covered a lot of things, so I really appreciate that. And again, thank you for this invitation. It's been a wonderful opportunity. One thing I'd like to touch on is how the culture continues to be a blessing. And of
Mm,
course, we don't have just one African culture, we have
mm,
many.
mm,
And it's so amazing to see how we've gone from, oh, they live in huts and fight lions to, oh, I want to go to Nigeria, I want to go to Ghana, I want to go to Ethiopia. And the power of social media in allowing us to tell our stories finally, and not solely National Geographic or whatever magazine they decide to show our cultures in. Um, let's continue to share the beauty. Of course, we should always talk about the true things and show all sides of the story. But I think that we've really done ourselves a service by showing people how we truly are, how wonderful our food is, how beautiful our clothing is, and our fabrics and our culture and our history. Because if we don't tell it, somebody else will tell it for us incorrectly. So let's continue to share our stories.
Thank you so very much. My guest today has been Aderayo, sharing her own story about who we are, where we come from, the richness of our culture, how we're staying true to identity, being here, but understanding that, hey, here's home as well, and home is a home as well. You have been listening to the Diaspora Dialogue series with LA. I'm your host, Lillian Agbeyegbe. Remember, you're watching us, you're listening to us, you're sharing what this conversation, liking, commenting, and letting us know what you think about our conversations. And hey, you have a diaspora story, share it in a link, or email and reach out to us and say, I want to share my story as well. We'll give you the platform. This is what we're about. Until I come your way again another time. Aderayo, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And thank you for listening, and I'll be back next time. Thank you.
Iṣẹ́ iṣẹ́